officially made you a billionaire. What was that
Soon
like?
enough, you'll be there.
Aspiring yes,
billionaire.
yes.
Yeah, I love the concept of getting a beer and fried chicken after a hard day's work. That seems like
It's called 치맥.
Chimeg. All right, well, maybe Chimeg is in my near future. Don't try to hit the home run, right? Aren't trying to hit the home run.
Right.
Grind out little bit by little bit and accumulate wealth and accumulate advantage over the long haul.
각자의 방식으로 성장 곡선을 그리는 사람들 플러스 리더스입니다. 자, 오늘의 주인공은 약 430조 원을 굴리는 글로벌 대체투자 자산운용사 블루아울 캐피털의 공동사장이자 자수성가로 부를 이른 억만장자 Michael Rees입니다. GP stakes를 대규모의 제도권 투자 전략으로 성장시키며 글로벌 대체투자 시장을 이끌어오신 분인데요. 반갑습니다. Hello, Michael Rees.
Hello.
Mr. Rees.
Pleasure to
Can I
be
call
here.
you Michael?
Of course.
Well, it's great to have you here. I was preparing for our talk today, and I noticed that you have a background at Lehman Brothers.
I was at Lehman, and Lehman, if you recall, had an absolutely tremendous run from the time I joined in 99 and 2000 all the way really right up until the end. And it was the greatest group of people. I loved working there. I had so much pride in working at Lehman with the team. And it was really sad to have to go through that.
So do you remember what you were doing the day that the company filed for bankruptcy? I think it was September 15th.
Yeah, it was September 15th. It was a Sunday night. I was in the office. I was part of the team that was tasked with trying to save the firm. And you know, my career, and what we'll talk about today, is buying and selling asset management companies. Right. And so one of the ways that we were trying to save the firm was by selling the asset management organization, which was Neuberger Berman and a host of other things that we had built and collected while at Lehman. And we thought we could raise capital by selling that. We just ran out of time. Almost had it done. We had 2 private equity firms lined up, and we were just a few days too slow in getting that deal across the goal line, and who knows, it could have even saved the firm and changed the course of certainly my career and financial history. Absolutely.
Right. So we're going to talk about this more later, but do you think that experience pushed you toward entrepreneurship?
It certainly did, because I had been thinking about building this business at Lehman Brothers. I even had started raising capital for it. And at Lehman, it would have been a big institutional effort. There would have been many people on the team, et cetera. But post-2008, post the financial crisis, I had to start over. And it was really just myself and a couple people. And we started from a kernel of a team, and we built what this GP stakes business is today. But it would have looked and felt a lot different had it been sort of part of that bigger organization of Lehman and less entrepreneurial. And I think Neuberger Berman is a great place where you can start a business and have ownership of it. And I was fortunate enough to have that. And sad that the Lehman Brothers thing ended the way it did, but very fortunate that I was able to transition to Neuberger and build the business there.
Right. So let's talk about GP stakes investing, because I think for a lot of people, it's still a very new term. How would you explain that to us?
The GP stakes industry, let's break it into 2 parts. GP is what people usually refer to a private equity firm as, a general partnership. And stakes means we take a minority stake in the actual management entity, the management company of a private equity firm. It's a different way to express an investor's appetite for getting exposure to private markets. Instead of investing in the funds managed by a GP, we invest in the house, in the firm itself, and get a piece of the economics. It ultimately has a similar exposure because some of that money ends up in their fund. So it has a similar feel to investing in a private equity fund, but it's more thought of as investing in the house itself.
So how is it different? Could you give us a bit more example?
When investors give money to a private equity firm, to a GP, they pay fees. Heard of the old 2 and 20, 2% management fee, 20% carried interest. That is being paid by the investors in the fund. When you are an owner of the GP, you're entitled to a slice of that 2 and that 20. So that management fee that's charged every quarter is something our investors get to participate in. It's very stable and cash flowing. And then when a private equity firm sells a company and generates carried interest, our investors get to participate in that too. So we're sitting on the side of the table of the owners of that private equity firm and being a partner of theirs.
Okay, so let's see if this is a fair analogy. Instead of buying a restaurant in New York, let's say, I find a group of managers that manage a handful of restaurants and I invest in them. Is that
Yeah,
a fair analogy?
that's a fair analogy. That's one way to think about it. Or another way, a colleague of mine says that we don't eat the burgers, we own the McDonald's. So we don't invest in the products of the firm. We get to own the restaurant itself. But we do back really good, talented people that, like your analogy, that own and operate the business. We're the financial provider behind it.
So you helped create an entirely new asset class by investing in the asset managers themselves, way back when, 10 years. What business model in finance is currently being underestimated the same way GP stakes investing was underestimated in 2011?
What I think we'll see, and it'll be on a long-term trend as well, is the slow breakdown of the 5-year invest, 5-year harvest model.
Right.
That started, and give credit to KKR or Blackstone 30, 40 years ago. And I think what we're seeing, though, is there are a lot of deals or investments that don't necessarily fit a 5-year hold. Maybe it should be a 2-year hold. Maybe it should be a 12. And I think what we'll see are different types of strategies that will help break down that 5 and 5 model. You're seeing it with continuation vehicles. You're seeing it in the growth of the secondaries industry. So it's not necessarily a brand new space, but it has the type of long-term growth trend that we see, and certainly we see in GP stakes as well.
But major financial institutions like Goldman Sachs or Blackstone have also entered the GP stakes business. So what is your competitive advantage?
Well, really, the competitive advantage that we were trying to achieve was across a couple different dimensions. Number one, we wanted to be the biggest.
The biggest.
The biggest, so that we could write a nice big check to one of the larger firms in the industry. And as the industry grew rapidly, we wanted to be the one that would be the provider of that capital to the top 200 or so GPs out there. And for that, we needed a nice big fund. So really, before they recognized that this part of the market was developing, we went out and raised more capital than they did and really got to be the big end of the market. There are a few other players, you mentioned a few. They typically focus on mid-sized deals. When the deal is over $750 million in check size, we have a 90% market share.
Wow, 90% market share.
So we typically don't lose when it's a nice big deal. If a big firm decides they want to take on a partner, they almost always pick us. The other thing we did was we put together a team of experts that will help the GP after we do the deal. So it's not just a check. You get a strategic relationship with us. That team, really, people said, these GPs, they just want your money. They don't want the strategic help. I don't know if anybody's going to use your GP strategic team. And one of the most fulfilling things is to see how that team has developed. It's over 60 people right now, and they're working with our partners round the clock to help them build leading businesses and leading franchises. And that's a very fulfilling part of building this business, was to be not just, quote, dumb money, but to be a strategic partner and partner with some of the best firms that are in the industry.
So great investor, they don't just analyze the present. Through that process, they develop a sense for where capital and talent and opportunity are heading before it becomes obvious. So you have this very unique vantage point on global capital flows. Where is the smartest money moving today?
Well, what we're seeing in the industry is a whole different groupings of investors that are at different parts of their journey in private markets. Some that were early adopters that have been in private markets for 40 years, and they're pretty much at their limit of what percentage of their capital they want to have in private markets. And then new new segments, new geographies that are really just getting started. So you sort of have to look at the whole complexion and all these adoption curves to see where the marginal dollar is coming from. But right now, marginally, it's coming from geographies like Latin America, parts of Mexico, Australia, certainly here in Korea. You have organizations that are set up well to address those type of client segments or those product categories like insurance or the wealth channel. So you really have to look at where the marginal dollar is coming from to see the whole complexion of the industry and how it's changing. And that's really why larger firms are doing better. There was a window of time 10 years ago where any size firm could do well. You could start your firm, you could raise a couple $100 million, and you would be in business as a private equity firm.
Right.
Now it's hard. Now you really have to have global scale, a global brand to be, attractive to those kind of new investors coming into the space.
So what does that mean for Blue Owl?
That means we need to make sure we are one of the globally recognized brands that has the ability to attract capital from all of these different channels, from individual private wealth investors, from the insurance part of the world, and then from these geographies that you have to go get to. That's why we're on a plane a lot, is to go find the capital. And that's, like I said, that's hard to do if you're a startup, a smaller firm, et cetera. It really is favoring the established, bigger firms today.
Right. So like you said, the private market, they have grown dramatically over the past 2 decades. What do you think most people still misunderstand about that industry?
I think we're sort of still on this really long structural growth trend for private markets. Notwithstanding SpaceX's IPO recently, very few companies are going public. We might have a little bit of a mini wave here of IPOs, but in general, the number of public companies has been decreasing dramatically over the last 25 years. Companies enjoy being private longer, and some companies want to be private forever. So I do think we're seeing a tectonic shift from original playbook where you started a company and ultimately your goal was to take it public through an IPO. Now we're seeing a lot of companies that like staying in that private part of the world where you don't have all of the requirements of being a public company. So I think that structural trend is something that, it'll have little ups and downs over time, but in general, that's something that's here to stay. And we think on another couple decades of private for longer.
Looking at Asia, where do you see the most compelling long-term opportunities?
I think Asia, from a private markets perspective, has had a lot of large firms that had an Asian strategy. So you hear about some of the biggest firms in the world, and they invest in North America, but they also have an Asian strategy. I think there are very few specialists that have scaled to the size where we typically invest. We have a leading partner here in Seoul. We're proud of that partnership for sure. But there aren't countless deals that we can do in Asia. Most of what we'll do is help investors allocate capital through our funds into some of these GP stakes around the globe. It's more of a fundraising experience here, parts of Japan, as I mentioned, parts of Australia, et cetera. Less so us putting money in the ground into GP stakes in the region. There'll be a few, but not as many as in other parts of the world.
So what strength does Korea's private market have? The ecosystem, I guess.
Well, it's a very tight-knit ecosystem of investors, and they are very thoughtful and diligent. Some of the best diligence comes out of firms here in Korea. It is not a pushover kind of a culture here or a institutional segment. It's really a very, very diligent group. Also, though, once you get a Korean investor to commit to your product, it's highly likely that they will be a partner of yours on a repeated basis. So it has a lot of long-term relationship benefits to it.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about the private sector, right? And for someone like me, it's not easy to invest in the private sector. So what's your read on the public markets?
Well, luckily, I don't have to really have a read on the public markets. It's certainly not my forte. I think we're at a point where things are certainly exuberant out there.
That's an interesting choice of
Yeah.
Exuberant.
Which was probably because I think we learned of the passing of Alan Greenspan today, and he coined the phrase irrational exuberance, describing what we talked about earlier, which was that run up to 2000 in the tech and internet wave. And I do think we're somewhere in a similar trend, just given all of the money that's being invested across the overall AI ecosystem. Don't know how much more we have to run. You could have, called the top in 1997 and been 3 years too early. So I'm certainly not a stock picker, but I do see a lot of capital flowing into some of these public entities and public companies. And I hope it works out well.
So building that business, the core part of building your business is trying to identify the exceptional asset managers, right? And earning their trust and forming this long-term partnership. The first step would be to identify those great partners, right? So how do you identify them?
The industry of alternative asset management has really evolved a lot over the last 20 or 25 years. It went from a star system to more of an institutional business. So it used to be a firm would be known for one person, and you really were looking at that one person saying, do I want to partner with this human for the next X years? Now we think about it differently. We look at the business itself, the whole firm, and say, can we see this business becoming a leading player and staying a leading player for a long period of time? So we're more looking at the institution.
So the whole team.
The whole team and how they work together, how their performance has evolved, whether we think they'll be able to continue. And a lot of it is thinking through or hearing their story of succession planning.
Right.
How they plan on not having it be all about one person, how they plan on having it evolve over time to the next generation and the one after that. We hope some of our investments last 20, 30, 40 years. So it's not going to be one person we're partnered with. We want to be able to partner with an organization, a stake in a large GP that we can own, irrespective of who is at the helm at that given time.
Okay. How did you convince these already elite private equity firms into selling minority stakes?
Yeah, we really try to not convince them. We want to be ready when they're ready. So we travel around and have for the last decade gone to all of these leading firms and said, here's what we do. We have the money. It's ready when you are. We have the strategic team, and we've been doing it the longest and think we have the most experience. So when it comes time, when it matches where you are in your organization's journey, we want to be the one you pick. It's really hard to convince somebody to do one of these deals if they don't want to do it themselves. I don't think we've ever succeeded in convincing somebody.
Convincing, quote unquote, right?
We want to be there and ready when they are and have them pick us. But it's more about having the right assets at the right time so that they choose us instead of convincing them.
How do you distinguish the partnership that you say yes to and the partnership that you say no to? What are some qualities that you look for?
Yeah, and it all comes back to the concept of longevity.
Longevity.
We want to make sure that the firm has the pieces in place to be around for a long period of time. And that's the people, that's the track record, that's the investors. And so our whole diligence process comes back to longevity. Can we see this firm being around, not just for 5 or 10 years, but 15, 20, 25 years? And our investors are going to do really, really well if we can find firms that are around 25 years from now.
I mean, you've worked with some of the best managers and best companies, right? What is one trait they have in common that most investors underestimate?
Yeah, I think in the private equity world, different from the hedge fund industry or other types of investing, it really is about building a team. We talked about it earlier. It's about putting together an organization that's going to win together. What I've seen consistently is that the best PE managers do a great job of cultivating and managing their team. It's not a star system. They want to do it in a way where they can all win together, they can be aligned, they can have aligned incentives, and ultimately they build a franchise that has key characteristics that the franchise does well, not just an individual.
Is there a common trait among people who tend to do well in preserving the wealth?
Well, I think embedded in your question is the word preserve. I do think good investors have a handle on downside protection.
Downside protection.
That's pretty much the common theme across most of our GP partners. It's not losing money. Making money, that can be done, but the secret to good returns is trying not to lose it.
Right.
And so I do think when you look across a lot of our GP partners, downside protection and conservatism is one of the hallmarks of it. And we tend to shy away from strategies that are swing for the fence, make $1 trillion on an investment. We try to find organizations that just won't lose money, and they'll be good shepherds of capital over time.
So I've had the privilege of interviewing a couple very successful people like yourself, and I've discovered that they are very simple in that they just do when they feel like they need to do. They don't give second thought. They just go ahead and do it. And then they just kind of like fix it along the way, I guess. What about you? Do you have like a strong criteria when you make a decision? Do you apply that to everyday like practices?
Yeah, I do think there is a common theme that organizations and leaders can't have a high activation energy where they sit around and they wait and
just
wait.
Go for it.
You just got to go for it. And I think that comes over time. Maybe not everyone starts their career with that, but when you do, the phrase "heavy is the head that wears the crown." If you're the leader and you're going to be out there making the call, you've got to believe in it and you've got to go. You've got to run hard and make the decision and don't look back. And clearly, there are times to course correct. But really, you have to have conviction in what you're going to decide to do.
Is that how you make decisions too?
I think so.
Okay, you just go for it.
Well, it's after a lot of consideration and
Right.
thought, but when you decide, it's 100%.
No looking back.
No looking back.
All right, so let's fast forward to when you grew Dial Capital's assets to $7 billion, right?
Yep.
And then you decided to merge with Owl Rock. It became Blue Owl Capital. You became co-president, and which officially made you a billionaire. I mean, I imagine, I can't imagine because I'm not there yet. So what was that
Soon
like?
enough, you'll be there.
Aspiring yes,
billionaire, yes.
But please tell me.
Well, look, I don't think it had a meaningful change in my day-to-day because I still have almost all of my net worth in Blue Owl stock. I'm a big believer in what we're building at Blue Owl. And so it wasn't like we, had a big celebration or anything like that. We just went on with building the business that we're focused on, and we'll worry about the billionaire side of things later.
Right, but I do have one question. It might sound gauche, but please bear with me because I have a lot of questions about being a billionaire. When, I guess like capital is not the primary constraint, I feel like your views would change. Did that happen for you? Like, did the meaning of success change, or did how you view the world change?
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of is that people refer to myself and the Dial team, the Blue Owl Stakes team, as a very humble group of individuals. A lot of us are from Pittsburgh. We hired a bunch of people that we knew from the Pittsburgh market, and that comes with a lot of humility. So I'm quite proud that I don't think much has changed along the way as the team and I have financially, reaped some benefits of growing this business.
I'm just curious, what does your day-to-day look like, when you're not working?
Well, day-to-day starts early, and I'm not sure there are any days where I'm not working. The problem, blessing or the curse of the iPhone is that you can pretty much work anywhere, anytime. And so I'm always, either on the phone or keeping an eye on various parts of the business. And then I do like to make sure you put the phone in your pocket and you give real attention to your family when it's their time. I think that's one of the things, one of the traits that I think people underestimate. When given these phones attract so much of our attention, when you're one-on-one with someone or when you're in a small group, keeping the phone in your pocket, keeping it away, and being genuinely present with someone, I think is one of the things that I try to pride myself on. It might mean there are windows of time, hours and hours that go by, and I don't look at my texts or my emails. But when you're present with people, you want to give them your full attention.
Right. So what motivates you to work that hard?
I just love it. I love the people. I love what we're doing. I think we still have a lot to accomplish. Our funds are doing very well, but I want to see them continue to generate great returns. We're privileged to invest money for individuals, for institutions, for insurance companies, and I take that fiduciary responsibility very seriously. And I want to make sure that we can continue to run hard and do great things for our investors. And I want to be able to leave the business in a spot where, just like I mentioned earlier, it won't be about one individual. It won't be about me. I can go off and know that my team has it and will generate great returns for investors after I'm no longer active.
This is not your first time visiting Korea, right? So
No.
what do you like to do when you come here?
Oh, it's such a great place to come. I usually eat. The food is so good here.
What kind of food? What's your favorite Korean food?
Well, when you're a visitor, you end up going to similar places, whether it's a good barbecue spot or I love the concept of getting a beer and fried chicken after a hard day's work. That seems like a great cultural advancement.
It's called chimek. It's chicken and beer is 맥주 in Korean,
Okay.
so chimek.
Chimek.
Yep.
All right. Well, maybe Chimek is in my near future.
Okay, so to wrap up our interview, if you were starting out as a graduate of mechanical engineering, right, in 2026, would you go into alternative asset management just directly, or would you have a different career path?
Well, I do think that some of the larger organizations do a phenomenal job of training early employees early in their career. And so I would certainly love to think that, my younger self would have been able to hop into a firm like Blue But I do think for the most part, you get a great training ground. Mine was at Lehman Brothers, other investment banks, consulting firms. So I do think there's something to be said for starting your career at a larger organization and then keeping your head on a swivel and deciding what to do next.
Do you have any other advice for, let's say, investors?
Yeah, I am a huge believer in Malcolm Gladwell's book,
Tipping Point.
Tipping Point. I actually saw someone in the coffee shop downstairs reading Tipping Point. I thought that was great. And his other book, Outliers. And what Outliers really talks about is the value of accumulated advantages. So things that you do every day, they don't have to be big, but if you could just do them in a repeated way, the advantage accumulates over time. So I always try to tell the interns and young employees to build some of those things into your day-to-day routine, whether it's listening to 5 minutes of a podcast like this every day, something just to build a tiny little advantage that will accumulate over time. I always say very few of us will get our chance to hit a home run in the bottom of the ninth with the bases loaded. We don't get those kind of opportunities. But what we do get is a way to build lots of little tiny things into our day that will accumulate over time. That's always been my suggestion to the younger crowd that comes through our doors at Blue Owl.
So you don't always get to hit the jackpot, but you can learn ways to not lose money as an investor.
That's right. That's right.
What's the most important thing retail investors like myself and a lot of our viewers should keep in mind to protect themselves from those losses?
Well, that's it. It's focus on the downside, do the little things well. Don't try to hit the home run, right? It's all about grinding it out little by little and building things into your portfolio, assets that you want to hold for a long time that have downside protection, things like that where you ultimately aren't trying to hit the home run.
Right.
You're trying to grind out little bit by little bit and accumulate wealth and accumulate advantage over the long haul.
And maybe you might get to hit a home run.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. They do pop up quite a bit in investing. I'm not sure about in career-wise, but they do pop up a lot in investing. And some of the Korean companies are having their home run moments.
Oh,
Unbelievable. It's exciting.
great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Real pleasure.
네, 마이클 리스의 성공 공식은 아무도 시장이라고 부르지 않던 곳에서 기회를 먼저 알아본 선고안이었습니다. 자, 소수의 특권처럼 여겨지던 투자의 세계를 점점 더 많은 사람에게 열어가고 있는 마이클 리스의 이야기 여기까지입니다. 자, 지금까지 플러스 리더스와 함께 해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.